Panthers, yikes. 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 I'm just going to start it with this. I feel like I'm the calm down guy on both sides now. It's never as bad as it seems. It's never as good as it seems with the Panthers this year. That game, I can see why you might be panicking if you watched it. Or maybe even more so if you just got like in-game breaks, like somebody else were just telling you what was going on in that game, because it would feel like every 10 minutes, another turnover. Yep, Cowboys scored again. Another turnover. Panthers were due for a clunker. I'm not panicking. Now, it was a clunker, right? Call a spade a spade. A stinker is a stinker. You don't have to pretend like it was anything other. But progress in rebuilding a basement NFL franchise, NFL roster, NFL team, it usually is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. It usually is a series of steps forward and setbacks. And then eventually, right, you drop in the right quarterback, or eventually you draft or trade for the dynamic wide receiver, and then everyone goes, look at that guy changed everything. But you don't realize over the last 5 years you've been making small steps forward and fighting against adversity, and that guy gets all the credit. Progress is not just all up, all forward, even though it did feel that way for the Panthers for like a month. Even though there was a lot to it was getting better, then this happens. Sunday was one big step back, a leap, if you will. But as long as you have more steps forward than steps back, you're doing fine. And in a weird way, the steps back can help you with your next step forward. This is a hypothesis, right? We'll never know what's happening between the ears of the players, but maybe they drank some of their own Kool-Aid, right? Maybe they believed some of their own hype. They read some of their own highlights. Maybe after every game they checked their Twitter and people were yelling at them for such a long time that it felt pretty good to check their Twitter over the last couple of weeks and have people hyping them up. So they refreshed often, and they checked back in often, and they searched their name often. It was the first time in years the Panthers had been a favored team in an NFL football game.
2022 against Pittsburgh.
They were the betting favorite. First time in years they had hype. Maybe that felt good. And coaches will tell you, we'll use a Triangle head football coach, UNC head football coach Bill Belichick, his buddy Nick Saban, it's rat poison. It's rat poison. So if you're believing your own hype and then you get smacked in the face by a team like the Cowboys, who you might say aren't a good NFL football team this year, but the most important part is they are an NFL football team. If you show up, right, smelling what you're stepping in and loving it, they will beat you. They will stick with you. They will be able to find CeeDee Lamb. And they will have 10 plays drawn up just to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb, to where if you aren't paying attention, he'll have a huge game, and he did. Now, the lesson is, don't do that. The lesson is, for the coaching staff, how do you sense that your team is doing that and make sure that it doesn't happen again? Right? The question is, there is a fine line between letting the players sink or swim on their own and understanding when they need help. Dave Canales, after the game, was asked why the offense was so inconsistent.
I got to look at the film, but I think, just from a glance, there was a missed block here or there. There was just some execution stuff, that happened, and then at a certain point, we got to go. We got to start throwing it and try to be more aggressive with it. And they were able to come up with some really good rushes on us and put us in some pretty bad situations, some second and longs. Certainly the penalties too. That was another thing that kind of showed up that really put us into some difficult spots as well. So a lot of stuff we got to clean up.
I liked the idea on Friday of letting guys test themselves against some of the best players on the Cowboys. I like the idea of not every single time Micah Parsons was lined up over Ike Ekwonu, giving him a bunch of help, right? I like the idea of 5 times throughout the day putting Ike Ekwonu and Micah Parsons on an island and saying, you don't get a running back chip. You don't get a tight end. You might be up against the best defensive player in the league. Show me why we drafted you in the top 10. But there is a fine line between that and looking around going, okay, we need to get him some help. Bryce Young was asked after the game what led to so many sacks, and there were a whole bunch of them, and pressures even when there weren't sacks. Here's Bryce's answer.
Yeah, I mean, credit to them. That's a really good unit over there. Obviously, really good players. So, they deserve their credit. But stuff I can do better as well. We're just getting the ball out quicker, protection, sliding protections, whatever it may be. It's not just the line. And also, when we're in those situations, when pass rushers know we got to pass the ball, it's tough on those guys again against a really good unit. So it's all of us. Again, there's stuff I could have done better. We'll watch the tape and grow from it.
Let's talk about how this game became, what we've affectionately called the replacements quicksand game, where it feels like the more you struggle, the worse and worse it gets, right? Because the way I look at it is everything Bryce Young said there is correct. You get behind, now a good pass rush gets to pin their ears back. Your offensive line doesn't have as much of the element of surprise. All right, well, how did you get behind? The defense let CeeDee Lamb carve him up on the touchdown drive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, CeeDee Lamb is very good, but call me crazy. Nobody else really on the Dallas offense scares me very much. If you got to put an extra safety over the top of CeeDee Lamb to make sure an underthrown ball gets broken up, I think you do that. If you need to put an extra body out there to make sure his run after the catch isn't bananas, I think you do that. Make someone else beat you. And then the interception follows the next drive. They get a field goal out of it. Now you're down 10. And, oh, look, now Micah Parsons doesn't have to worry as much about the run. Now you're abandoning Chuba Hubbard, and that defense gets after you. Now the lead grows, and on and on. It's one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another.
I think Chuba Hubbard on the first drive had 4 carries and only 6 more after that.
And it didn't feel like – there have been times where I'm like, why aren't they getting the ball to Chuba? Mm-hmm. It did feel like more in this one, it was like, well, they can't really depend on the run because there's ground to make up, even though we've said it in the past. The Panthers, even when behind, need to continue trusting the run. It just wasn't as obvious kind of in my gut watching the game this time. There's the fumble, there's the interception, there's the obvious touchdown where Cooper Rush catches a rhythm because you're not guarding his number 1 wide receiver enough, and it just spirals out of control, right? So the lesson learned is you take care of your P's and Q's early in the game, you don't end up in that spiral. 2 hands on the ball in the pocket, you don't end up in that spiral, right? You don't take as many chances on defense. You guard their number 1, you don't end up in that spiral. So the question is, and we're going to talk about Bryce individually, but I think this applies to quarterbacks. I think this applies to teams. There is a certain base level of talent you need. Okay, if you don't have the certain base level, other NFL teams will just beat you. Right? They'll find the weak spot and they will just keep tugging on that weak spot until it's done. There's also this other thing that you need, right? Aside from the base level of talent, maybe the most important thing in NFL football for quarterbacks and teams as a whole is your ability to respond to situations like this. You can go back, most Super Bowl teams, there's like one really weird stinker on their season, right? I feel like every year in the first month of the season, the Patriots would get smacked by the Chiefs with like Alex Smith, or they'd get blown out by Andrew Luck and the Colts, or something crazy like that. And everybody would sound the alarms, and then they'd reel off like 15 of the next 17 and win a Super Bowl.
There was a game earlier this year, Josh Allen completed 30% of his passes.
And
he's probably going to be the MVP.
There's a conversation.
Yeah.
But they were very good yesterday. But it's you just look at it and it's okay, now how do you respond?
Mm-hmm.
And it can't be, if you're Bryce, they can't have to bench you for a month so you can re-get your gears going. If you're the Panthers, you can't need a quarterback change in order to switch the vibe. It has to be you can play a clunker because you're not the most talented team in the league and you can't expect to fly through every game at the top of your abilities. You have to be able to play a stinker and have it be a good thing. Or not actually, but treat it like it could be a good thing because you're going to bounce back with a vengeance unknown to mankind. That's what the question is now. I'm not sounding any alarms. I am sounding some, boy, I wish we could have. And now you go do what you could have done last week, this upcoming week, and we'll all be all right.